Hi, green lovers. If you have grown tomatoes before and if you have transplanted them into your garden, you've probably heard that you need to bury them really, really deep. And this is because tomatoes have this unique property that wherever the stem touches the soil, it produces roots. So it makes common sense that if it has more roots, it can absorb more water, more nutrients, and all kinds of good stuff and create a stronger plant. So I always bury my tomatoes pretty deep. In fact, I would bury this all the way up to the top so that only the first maybe 4 branches on the top are visible above the level of the soil. And there are a couple of ways that you can actually do this burying deep business. Let me show you how it's done, and also let's do a little experiment between the two different ways I'm going to be burying these to see whether it makes any difference at all. You ready? Let's take a look. Okay, so here are a few determinate tomatoes that I'm going to be planting in this planter. They're actually the first ones of the season that I'm getting in the ground, so it's really exciting. Today is April 10th, and I am in zone 9B. But you will notice that this tomato plant is lying down on its side and it has started to turn up, and that was done intentionally. I actually let this tomato plant lie on its side like this so that it does that, so that when I bury it I can actually bury it lying down. All right. And then the other way, obviously, is the way that we would normally do it with most tomato plants, which is we'd pinch off the bottom leaves and then just bury it really, really deep. So we'd bury it standing up. But is there any difference in the quality of the tomatoes or the amount of production depending on how you bury them in the soil? Now, know that tomatoes are vining crops, and so they do tend to want to crawl or lay around on the soil, and wherever the soil touches the stem, those roots go down in there. And the roots at the surface are typically what's called feeder roots, and they're the ones that are absorbing nutrients and sending it to the tomato. Now, does it produce more feeder roots if you have it lying down? Or does it produce more feeder roots if you've got it standing vertically? Or does it make any difference at all? That's the experiment that we're going to try to do. So subscribe to my channel and follow along so we can find out whether there's any difference between this tomato plant that's going to be planted lying down or this tomato plant that's going to be planted vertically. They're both San Marzano determinate tomatoes, so the experiment shouldn't run for too long, probably around 3 months or so. Okay, so I've dug a nice long trench here because this is where we're going to be burying lying down tomato plants. And as always, I add a couple of handfuls, because there's a couple of plants, organic fertilizer, and mix it into the soil. You don't want the roots directly in contact with the fertilizer, so mix it in pretty well. And then pop out your tomato. Whoa, those roots are starting to circle. This is a San Marzano. Stick the label in there. And I'm going to remove a lot of these lower branches. Like I said, I'm going to leave only the top cluster of branches. So all of that is going in. Loosen up the roots a little bit. Bury it in. And then the most important thing, don't forget to water it. Oh, and one more important thing. A kiss for luck. And just like that, the tomato season has started. Let me go ahead and finish the other plants now. This one is a Grand Marshal, which is also a determinate tomato. Roots are doing wonderful, very healthy plant. Again, I'm only going to be letting this top cluster of branches above the soil. Everything else goes inside. And the Grand Marshal is planted as well. They're a little bit close, but that's okay. We'll train them in the right direction once they start growing. And this one I'm going to be planting vertically. Also Grand Marshal, so they're going to be kind of diagonal to each other here. Let's take a look at the roots. They're really nice. Again, remove all the branches except the top cluster. I'm going to need a hole that's about that deep. Don't forget the fertilizer. There we go. That one is planted as well. I'm going to finish up the rest of it and we'll come back and check on the progress. And if you subscribe to my channel, we can follow along together and see how they're doing. And that's it. We're all done. And until next time, live green and love your greens.